Hello everyone and welcome to another Star Wars figure review. Today we're going to take a look at some more figures from the Force Awakens Builder Weapon series, and in today's review we're going to take a look at yet another version of the Resistance pilot Poe Dameron. Now, as I said in my last review, this particular version is Poe as depicted in his Resistance pilot uniform, and of the two figures released of Poe so far, that's the Armour Up and the Builder Weapon series figures, this one is probably the better of the two, mainly because it just depicts him in a more iconic uniform, and in many ways it's a much better figure, especially if you're not into the Armour Up gimmick. The figure itself is none other than this one. Again, this is Poe Dameron as he appears behind the controls of his Resistance X-Wing, specifically his Black Squadron X-Wing. And I've got to say, reasonable figure for the most part. There are a few things about it that I'm going to complain about in this review. Nothing too major, nothing to put me off the figure as a whole, but just things that could have been improved. So I'll talk about those in just a little bit. Before we do, we're going to take a look at the packaging that Poe Dameron comes in. And once again, we get really cool packaging for this figure. We have Kylo Ren featured prominently at the top of the card. We've got the Force Awakens logo just to the side, and a very cool image down below of Poe Dameron himself. As you can see on the front of the box, we do have an image of the Builder Weapon piece once it's assembled, and on the reverse side you get an in-depth look at all those pieces that you'll need to construct the figure. As you can see there, we do have Poe Dameron, the Resistance Trooper, and the TIE Fighter pilot, which I've previously reviewed for you. This is possibly one of the figures that we'll skip. That's the Resistance Trooper. I've seen him on pegs in stores, and he doesn't look all that great. So until we see a better release, he's one that I'll likely leave on the pegs. But if you want to pick him up for the sole purpose of completing this weapon, by all means do so. And you can currently pick up all these figures and many more at staractionfigures.co.uk. So be sure to hit the link in the video description to add these ones to your collection. So there is the packaging for Poe Dameron. Now, before we get into the figure, I'll just briefly give you a look at the Builder Weapon piece. From what I can gather, this appears to be the top part of the Builder Weapon piece. As you can see, it looks like some sort of turbine or generator. And again, it's a very weak piece. Not much detail, very minimal in the way of paint applications, and just, again, as a standalone piece, not all that great. I'm sure once it's connected to the cannon, it looks a little bit better, but as it is, it just doesn't really do a whole lot. What it can do is serve as a backpack. As you can see, there is a peg there which can be plugged into Poe's back, and yeah, not really many words I can use to summarise this other than poor, crappy, and very awful looking. It just, I don't know, there's just something about it. It looks cheap, it looks nasty, it looks like he's wearing, fans on his back. Whether this is supposed to let him fly off into space or something like that, I really don't know. And again, I have severe doubts that we'll see accessories such as this in the actual movie. So for that reason, it's definitely a piece that I can afford to leave to one side, possibly even throw in the garbage. But this figure itself is really, really cool. One of the things I really like about it is the uniform. Like with the TIE Fighter pilot that I gave you a look at from the same line, it's brand new, but it also retains classic features. So obviously the main portion of the suit does contain the white pilot's bib, the breathing apparatus there with the tubes, the orange jumpsuit, the black gloves, and it's very reminiscent, of course, of the Rebel pilots from the original trilogy. We do get a brand new pilot helmet designed for Poe Dameron, and this is the one that he's seen wearing in the original trailer for The Force Awakens, when he gives out the big woohoo while he's flying the fighter into action. Now, one of my main complaints with this figure does lie within the helmet. As you'll see right off the bat, the most noticeable feature of this guy is the fact that the visor is a solid colour. I'm not a huge fan of this. Personally, I think it looks a little bit cheap and a little bit tacky, and you really don't get a good appreciation of the face sculpt underneath. I'm really sure that Hasbro could have, incorporated some translucent plastic there just to give us a look at the eyes underneath, but for some reason it's you know, painted in a block yellow, and it's very thick. You know, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. Almost looks like he's wearing a comb or something on his face. It just looks very strange. You know, and for that reason it loses a few points. This figure also loses a few positive reviews due to the fact that there are a few missing details. As we've seen in promo images and trailers so far, Poe Dameron does have some Aurebesh text just underneath the Resistance insignia on his chest there, and he also has some additional details on the helmet, which are all absent on this figure. Obviously that's possibly a scale issue, but we've seen highly detailed figures in the past, and while I realise that these figures aren't as well made as figures that we've seen in previous years, you know, added details would have gone a really long way to making up for some of those faults with the visor, and obviously the lack of articulation. So again, for that, it loses a few marks. In other areas of the figure, however, Poe does include some really cool aspects. He comes with a blaster pistol, which can be slotted into the holster on the side of the leg. Again, you've got some nice detailing on the torso, such as the chest apparatus there, the white bib once again, and of course the Resistance insignia placed on the helmet and bib. Got the black gloves once again. No boots with this guy. The pants actually go over the boots, which is a unique look. And in terms of articulation, Poe Dameron does feature a ball joint at the head. It's a very restricted ball joint though, it's practically a swivel. I'm not really sure why that is. We have swivels at the shoulders and swivels at the hips as well. So not a whole range of movement, but it does the job. You know, if you're wanting this guy just to stand at attention on your shelf display, or if you want him to sit inside an X-Wing, then obviously he does that. Once again, there is a version of Poe released in this costume with the Black Squadron X-Wing fighter that's available at the moment, and he does feature a removable helmet with that translucent visor. So if it can be done as a vehicle pack-in, why it can't be done as a standard figure, I really don't know. So for those few errors, it does lose a few marks, but for the most part, this is probably the best 3 3/4 inch Poe Dameron that you can pick up at the moment. There is a super articulated release on the way as part of the Walmart exclusive line of Black Series 3 3/4 inch figures, and of course there is the 6-inch version as well, which we'll be taking a look at later on down the line. So, you know, a take it or leave it kind of figure, but for me personally it's one of those that sits just on the fence. But if you want to add this one to your collection, you can do so via the link in the video description. So that's going to do it for this review on Poe Dameron, and I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at this figure. I'll be back to give you a look at some more LEGO sets, some Black Series 6-inch stuff, and of course many more Build-A-Weapon figures very soon. So stay tuned for all of those, and until next time, as always, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.